Halfway through the dinner rush, I signed to my kid brother across the counter. The man in the dark suit lifted his hand and answered in fluent ASL. "You're beautiful." The sign hit like a dropped plate. Sharp, ringing, impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the words, but how he formed them. Decisive fingers, clean grammar, confidence you saw in people who lived between languages. I'd seen that fluency in teachers and families who refused to treat silence as a defect, never on a man who looked like a storm sewn into wool. Alec caught the exchange and raised his brows. "What did he say?" I signed back to Alec, not breaking eye contact with the stranger as I wiped down the counter. "He ordered linguine," I lied. Alec huffed, amused. "Liar." He signed eat, study, bedtime, the routine I'd set since Mom died, when life got loud with bills and quiet with grief. He couldn't hear the espresso machine scream or the jazz curling through the restaurant, but he felt tension gather like thunder. The stranger tipped his chin, just enough to acknowledge he'd seen everything. His eyes were the color of wet concrete and patience. He read danger like etiquette. I drifted to table 12, tray steady though my hands were not. The sign kept blooming in my head, stubborn as dandelions through concrete. "You're beautiful." People said worse things to waitresses. They said better too. What haunted was his certainty. Night class signers cut corners. He hadn't. "Good evening," I said, voice even. "Shall I pour?" Yes, his oh yes. His audible voice was a low gravel road. Under the table, his hands moved again, fingers flicking deliberately in ASL below the linen's edge. "Thank you," he signed, his gaze steady, tightened with a laugh I didn't have time to release. I poured. The chandelier kissed a small scar on his jaw. "Your brother," he said aloud, to make it easier in the noise. "How old? 17. Robotics team." Forward on a Def League half, I nodded before he finished, heat climbing up my neck, heart aflare in my chest. Every day, I'd feel it starting at my neck. Every day, good. He settled, not relaxed but ready. He deserves people who meet him where he stands. Some men flirt with cash, some with declarations. This was neither. It made me more aware of him and more wary of myself. I delivered plates, refilled waters, crossed birthdays, and negotiated. Wrong notes lingered. Men too stiff for date night, shoes too expensive, too early to be tired. Alec signed from the pass. "You okay?" "Perfect," I signed. "Liar again," he mouthed with his eyes sparkling as he lifted a tray. He'd been born into a world that assumed broken, and somehow, he learned mischief first. The stranger's wine sat obedient as a dog. He didn't drink. He watched sightlines and exits, glances that never landed where they could be noticed. When a runner stumbled near him with a tower of plates, his hand shot out to steady the base. Precise rescue. Zero fanfare. A fighter's reflex. Stop it. My life was budgeted in quarters and bus schedules. It belonged to Alec, our walk-up, the stack of applications on my nightstand. New world, new routine, new spine. When I checked on him again, he set his napkin aside and signed deliberately. "There will be trouble at the back exit at 23:45. Stay away." The sentence was made from ice. I glanced at the clock. 23:31. Is this a joke? He didn't answer verbally. He signed the truth. Then his eyes cut to the bar, to the man nursing a whiskey that never fell. The bar guy adjusted his jacket again. Right shoulder, holster. The tell I didn't want to name. My brain ran math. Staff route. Camera blind spot. Delivery trucks after 11. Alec's habit of cutting through the loading dock to beat the crowd when he biked home ahead of me. 23:45. I hesitated, heart pounding, debating whether to cross the dining room to Alec or head toward the kitchen. But the stranger's hands were already in motion, drawing attention as he signed, tilting the mood of the room. "In," he signed. "They are watching. You will make noise. I will handle. Who are you?" I asked aloud because my hands felt cold. He studied me, exhaustion under polish. Not fatigue. Wait. He lifted his fingers. "Someone who hears you." Alec appeared at the end of the pass, tapping twice. He signed I'm going home, waiting for my okay. My heart sprinted. I shook my head and signed fast. "No, wait, please." Then softened my face so he wouldn't panic. He frowned, reading the tightness the way only brothers do. The man rose. The room shifted around him. As he buttoned his jacket, he He sighed once more without looking at me. Stay near the front. I busied myself with water pitchers and contingency. If they came through the back, the front was an escape. If the front, the first warning didn't sound. The air grew still as the back hallway sighed and metal rang. A plate shattered in the kitchen. The stranger didn't look back. He reached the host stand, touched the host's sleeve with 2 fingers, and quietly spoke a word that made room. He tilted his head slightly, and 3 men I'd never noticed stood up from 3 different tables, moving toward the bar. He quickly, with quiet competence instead of movie chaos. The bar guy reached under his jacket. A hand closed on his wrist before the thought finished. The man near the restrooms went for the exit and met a wall in a suit and a soft voice that dissolved intent. The third one, who hadn't been eating, finally looked like a man. I braced a palm on the counter and found it shaking from shock. Across the room, Alex stood wide-eyed, struggling to read lips flying by too fast. He looked at me. I signed a safe promise, trying to steady both of us. The stranger caught my eye again. Go, he signed. Now. My pulse crashed. Caught my eye again. Go, he signed. Now. So I did what I always do when the world tries to explain. I packed Alex's backpack and jacket into his arms, guided him toward the door, and kept a firm grip on his shoulder. We strode for the front entrance. Behind us came a release of collective breath, and the city's sounds returned, indifferent as ever. An air hit us, questions crowding. I signed breathe as we crossed the sidewalk glow and slipped into the dark seam between the florist and the locksmith. The city hummed after hours, buses sighing, neon on wet pavement. My brother read my face like captions. A man tried to make a mess and someone else cleaned it up, I said. Not enough. Alex saw through me, he always did. He'd been underestimated since kindergarten and couldn't bear soft lies. I added safe now, front only. Wait for me, my heart in my hands. Added safe now, front only. Wait for me. He signed stubbornly, no. Together. Before I could argue, the dark-suited man stepped through the revolving door, 3 figures shadowing his movements. The men scanned the sidewalk, studying Alex's backpack, noticing the frayed strap as we huddled together. Do not be here, the stranger said, voice low. Then his hand spoke, and that undid me again. It's our priority, I signed back, sharp, because fear curdled into temper. My brother is not a package. He is everything to me. Strong, stubborn, whole. A brother is not a package. He is a person. His gaze didn't flinch. Understood. He signed full sentences, patient as a teacher. To Alec directly, you okay? Alec squared his shoulders and sighed. I'm fine. Which meant he wasn't, but he'd survive. The stranger nodded like they'd inked a treaty, then pointed with his eyes to a sedan ghosting to the curb. Not menacing, just inevitable. I raised a hand. We're not going anywhere with you. Yes, he said, urgency cracking the marble, because the camera across the street recorded men who will decide you are leverage, because the back of your building is not lit, because someone just whispered your name into a phone a block away. He didn't check a device. He signed please. The small word hit clean. I felt Alex's breath on my forearm, counted 3 seconds, and opened the door. Inside smelled like leather, and a story I wasn't ready to read. The windows turned the street into an aquarium, quiet. The driver's eyes met mine in the mirror, weathered, assessing, not cruel. The stranger slid in beside us and left a respectful handspan of space, the shape of a boundary. Names, I said. I am Mikhail, he answered. In sign, softer. I work in hospitality. The unsaid sentence read closer to I build and protect. I'm Nika. This is Alec. We live 6 stops north. He has school in the morning. I have rented for 5 days. He smiled. The car moved like a decision, threading traffic. I tracked streetlights, exits, and mirrors. Alec typed on his phone and angled the screen. Dad would hate this, he wrote. Mikhail read our faces like a third script. Where do you feel safest? He asked. At home, I said, then amended it. If nobody knows where home is. He nodded once and angled 2 fingers. The driver shifted our path. We did not go to our building. We went to a place with brick bones and a promise. A small bistro on a quiet corner, closed but warm. Inside, the kitchen was scrubbed steel and lemon. The driver, Vin, according to his knuckles, set water to boil and cut fruit. Mikhail leaned on the prep table and looked at me. You warned him from the back. Why, I told him the truth. Your hand said trouble. The room is confirmed. The bar. The jacket adjustment. The man by the restrooms is watching the exit. The one near the kitchen is faking casual. And you drank nothing. A quirk of his mouth. I do not drink in rooms I did not make. He signed the notice holster. You noticed timing. You moved your brother to light. Good. Praise is a dangerous drug. I swallowed it and made a checklist. Are we safe here? For an hour, he said. Long enough for a plan. He looked at Alec. You sign fast. Formal instruction. Alec rolled his eyes and sighed. Oldest sister, daily drills, zero mercy. Vin snorted, set a mug in front of him, and dropped marshmallows like a bribe. Alec pretended not to be charmed and failed. Mikhail watched. Then his hands moved again, softer. I learned because I wanted to, not because I had to. My daughter was born deaf. She would be 8 today. It was a confession folded into a sheath. I saw a tiny backpack in a hospital room. A silence that had nothing to do with hearing. I built a bridge. I'm sorry, I said, and signed with care. I teach a free class at the rec center on Thursdays. It helps new families stop drowning. His inhale was quiet and full. Thank you, he signed, and for one heartbeat the boss slipped, and the father stood where he'd been hiding. The hour became 2. Plans are greedy. We mapped routes, habits, the way danger learns your calendar and writes itself into margins. Mikhail sketched my block on butcher paper and circled streetlights that needed fixing. Vin made a list that looked like orders. At 3, the city softened. Mikhail walked us to a rideshare and watched until the taillights turned a corner. He signed once in the glow. If anything feels wrong, go somewhere crowded and text the number I gave you. Then quieter. You did well tonight. We climbed our stairs like thieves, keys tucked between fingers. Inside, I checked locks twice, then made Alec show me homework because control is a lullaby. He rolled his eyes and did it. When he slept, I stood by the window and watched the city forage for morning. You're beautiful, he had signed, as if naming were a warrant. I told myself beauty was the least interesting thing about me, but his second sentence kept me awake. There will be trouble. He had been right, and I had choices to make. I was not ready. Morning brought the clatter of normal life, the cheap kind. The radiator hissed. The neighbor's radio leaking cumbia through the wall, the bus breaking like a long sigh at the corner. I cooked eggs. Alec patted in with sleep still clinging to his hair and signed good morning with one hand while the other scavenged toast. I answered with coffee and a look that meant tell me everything you dreamed so I can measure how scared you still are. He shrugged, then signed Robot 1 regionals in my dream and school, work, lists. I wrote them all. After he left, the apartment felt like a stage after the curtain. Props without actors. I scrubbed the counter because my body needed movement more than my brain needed rest. When I finally allowed myself the chair, I pulled the crumpled card from my apron. A number, no name. I considered throwing it away. I tucked it into the cookbook instead, under a page for a soup I could never afford to make. Late afternoon brought the kind of light that forgives. I walked to the rec center with my backpack of flashcards, rubber bracelets, and hope. Thursday. ASL came with cheap coffee and folding chairs, a circle of parents who arrived with guilt and left with grammar. Today I had 6, a mom with a fierce ponytail, 2 grandparents holding hands like a pact, a teenage boy who pretended to be bored so he wouldn't have to confess fear, a dad in a mechanic's jacket, and a woman who looked like sleep was a rumor. We practiced basic needs: eat, hurt, help. 2 hands make a bridge. 2 people make a language. I corrected wrists gently and celebrated every clean sign like a small victory. The mechanic's jacket dad flinched when his daughter laughed without sound, a reflex born of a world that punished joy that didn't match its frequency. I signed "It's beautiful" and watched something unclench. Halfway through, the woman near the door kept checking her phone, anxiety traveling from thumb to shoulder. I shifted the plan. We practiced emergency phrases: call, doctor, police, stay together. Her breathing slowed when her hands found rhythm. No one needed to know why. After class, I cleaned, stacked chairs, and lingered because the building felt like a sanctuary with scuffed floors. On the way out, a shadow detached from a brick column and resolved into the suit. Not the same one, I noticed. Less armor, more evening. Mikhail kept his hands visible and his voice gentle. I did not come inside, he said. I waited out of respect. Vin wanted to meet your students. I told him no. I crossed my arms because boundaries need a pose. How did you know I teach here? Your brother's school newsletter. Public, he added, like a man aware of lines. And you told me. Thursdays. I should have been angrier. I chose precision instead. Are you following me? I am following patterns around you, he said. Not you. There is a difference when you are the center of a storm you did not choose. The street smelled like rain that might change its mind. We walked toward the bus together, not touching. He matched my pace. That felt like a conversation. I asked the thing I had been avoiding. Last night, were those men police rivals or something worse? He considered. Men who rent their courage by the hour. Sloppy. Not the police. Not disciplined enough for men, I fear. And you. What are you? A father, he said, who was both true and evasive. Also, a man who buys property, hires good cooks, insists on clean books, and refuses to be shaken down. Hospitality is a nice word that hides a lot of jobs. The bus arrived with its own tired shudder. We stood under the shelter as it swallowed passengers. He did not ask to ride with me. He pointed at the crack in the shelter glass and the broken streetlight across the intersection. Right to the city, he said. Copy me. It will get fixed faster. How do you fix a city, Mikhail? Piece by piece. Start with bulbs, then move to bones. For a breath, the night loosened its jaw. He signed, take care, text if needed, then stepped back as if leaving was part of the promise. The bus carried me away. Through the window, I watched him diminish to a figure defined by stillness. At home, Alex sprawled across homework like an occupation. He signed, the coach moved practice, and I need $20 for tournament fees. I signed, show me your forehand, and maybe. He rolled his eyes. We negotiated pizza versus leftovers with the kind of ferocity usually reserved for treaties. He tried to sneak the card out of the cookbook when he thought I wasn't looking. I let him find it. Better that he know where the lifeline lived. Days layered. Quiet doesn't mean safe. It just means cue the next test. Small things turn strange. A sedan idles 1 block too long. A man in a reflective vest is watching our building with the attention of a locksmith who does not own keys. A flyer in our mail slot for a hearing clinic that no one on our floor had requested. I cataloged each and built nothing from them. Yet. On Sunday, between laundry cycles, the lobby door buzzed and did not stop. I checked the peephole, saw a woman with a clipboard and patience. City survey, she mouthed when I cracked the chain. I knew better than to believe clipboards, but her eyes were a kind of tired you can't fake. She asked about garbage pickup times. She asked about the lighting on our street. When I answered, she nodded like a metronome. As she turned to go, she hesitated. You are the one who teaches the sign class, she said. My sister's baby just failed the hearing screen. She cried all week. She didn't ask me for help, but the plea was loud in her posture. Shoulders pitched forward, jaw set like loneliness. I wrote the class time on her clipboard, and beneath it a sentence. It isn't a tragedy. It's a new alphabet. She blinked 3 times fast, nodded once, and left like she was carrying something warm instead of breaking. The next week tasted normal, mostly. Work, groceries, the rec center. Alex, robotics coach, is begging for volunteers. My learning fundraising meant weaponizing charm, but normal is just the quiet part of a fault line. The first slip arrived as an inconvenience. Our mailbox jammed with mail that wasn't ours, flyers for hearing implants, brochures for agencies we never contacted, a stack of junk mail addressed to a Mrs. Rusanova that didn't exist. I tossed them, but my nerves kept the copies. On Wednesday after closing, I lingered outside the restaurant waiting for Alex's bus. The sidewalk smelled like rain and fryer oil. A silver SUV crawled past twice, windows tinted to hands-off opacity. My pulse counted it. The third pass slowed. That was when a black sedan nosed into view behind me like punctuation. Vin leaned out the window. If they circle a 4th time, he said, sounding like he was noting the forecast, I will remove the driver. I stiffened. I didn't call you, no, he agreed. But he jerked his chin toward the sedan behind them. Noticed your street camera feed pulled a blind frame tonight. So here we are. The SUV vanished after the 3rd loop. I breathed again. Vin gave a curt nod and drove off, shadow swallowed by shadow. The sedan lingered a moment longer, Mikhail lowered his window just enough for light to paint the line of his brow. You should not walk alone after closing, he said. Habit is a map your enemies love. I am not your liability, I shot back. No, he said, gentler. You are someone they think is mine. The distinction matters only to the people holding the gun. That sentence lived in my chest all night. The next morning I ordered pepper spray, a new lock, and 3 motion sensors. I did not call him. Pride can make anyone deaf. 2 nights later, pride nearly got loud. Alec texted and finished late. Home soon. Then 5 minutes later, bus broken, rerouted side street. That is spelled wrong. He always texted punctuation like a little professor. I threw on shoes and was already halfway down the stairs when I called him. The call rang once, then static, too clean for an accident. The hairs on my neck rose. I scanned the street. No bus, no Alec. The laundromat gate sat half-lowered, lights flickering. Movement in its reflection, 2 shapes too tall to be him. I didn't think. I moved. The voice behind me was quiet as a hinge. Do not run, I spun. Mikhail stood there without theatrics, breath steady like the night had been waiting on his cue. His gaze followed mine, past the laundromat. He spoke into a small comm clipped under his collar, too fast for me to parse. Within seconds, Vin materialized like gravity had summoned him, and another man I hadn't met broke line of sight from a parked van. Where is my brother? I demanded, his jaw flexed. Inside, he said. They are waiting to see who comes for him. My insides turned electric. Let me through, not yet. If you go in first, they get 2 hostages instead of 1. Hostages, not target. The word reshaped breathing into thunder. Mikhail raised a hand, and 2 of his men moved, with choreography, not panic. A muffled shout followed. Then silence. A second later, a shape burst through the half-open gate. Alec, sprinting, face stark white. I caught him. He clung, shaking. We got to the corner before he could sign anything. Mikhail rested a hand lightly on Alec's shoulder and signed, Are you hurt? Alec shook his head, though his lungs worked like he'd outrun God. Mikhail signed again, slower. Safe now. Alec stared at him. Really stared. Then signed, You came. Not a question. A ledger entry. Mikhail nodded without flourish. I told your sister to call. She did not. So I watched anyway. When he said watched, it should have felt like an intrusion. Instead, something like relief leaked in through the crack fear had left behind. We took Alec upstairs. I made cocoa. He pretended not to need anchoring and stayed glued to my elbow. When he fell asleep, hood up, fists balled, I turned to Mikhail at the door. You can't keep appearing whenever my life trembles. He arched a brow. Would you prefer I arrive when it collapses? I hated that my answer was no. I crossed my arms. I don't want to be folded into whatever this is. This, he said, is a perimeter. The word was clean metal. Someone is probing you for weakness. They want to confirm proximity, to me, before escalation. And what if I don't want proximity to you? Then you'll still have proximity to them, he said softly, and they will not ask your consent. I used silence like armor. He didn't break it. He just lowered his voice until it was almost a confession. I did not choose you to be on this path, but once a name is spoken in certain rooms, protection is not a favor. It is physics. He handed me a folded paper, a map of routes and what-ifs. He'd drawn the alleys I cut through, the bus shelters I used as a shield in storms, the exact corner where the laundromat reflection betrayed the men waiting for my brother. He had been studying my world because someone else was too. I traced a line. They wanted him? No. His gaze flickered to the closed bedroom door. They wanted you. He is leveraging. The worst part of truth is how steady it sounds. I leaned on the counter so my knees wouldn't do something embarrassing. Why me? He didn't answer first. He waited. Then, because you interfered once, they need to know whether it was instinct or allegiance. But I didn't help you, I argued. I helped people in danger. Exactly, he said, and there was something like admiration in it. That makes you unpredictable. And unpredictable people must be categorized, ally, asset, or warning. I stared at the map until city blocks blurred. Slow burn danger escalates not by noise, but by logic, step, pressure, choice. I felt the ground narrowing under me. He left without touching me, without extracting a promise. He simply signed, "Contact me sooner," and disappeared back into the night he seemed made from. When the door shut, I realized the strangest part. I wasn't relieved he was gone. I was unsettled that the room felt emptier. Sleep was a rumor. I sat a while watching Alec breathe, thinking about thresholds. I had built our life out of independence and hard rules. Do not owe anyone. Do not give anyone leverage. But leverage had arrived anyway, and it knew my floor plan. In the morning, Alec signed 3 words. I want lessons. He meant defense, not vocabulary. I nodded. At work, I caught myself scanning angles like a second language. Mirror backsplashes, jacket weights, how someone holds a glass. I didn't know when I'd started tracking threats like weather. Maybe the night a stranger signed "You're beautiful" with grammar that carried grief. Maybe earlier. By Friday, the tension wore a new face. Opportunity disguised as pressure. The manager passed down a notice. The owner was visiting next week to review safety compliance. No one knew the owner's name. It matched a rumor. The restaurant had been quietly purchased by a shell corporation 2 years ago. Mikhail's kind of invisibility. I pretended not to connect the dots. But late that night, as I closed the register, a small envelope waited under the till. No name. Inside, a simple typed card. He will not come through the front. Be ready at the side exit. Same slick paper as the hearing clinic flyer. Same printer. Not welcome. A warning or a threat. When I stepped outside, a shadow leaned off the lamppost, waiting. The kind of stillness expensive men wear when they are all out of patience. Mikhail didn't speak. He just looked at the envelope in my hand and exhaled once, like a fuse had lit. The wind carved an edge down the alley, and for a moment we just stood there, 2 silhouettes in a space too narrow for truth. His eyes flicked from the envelope to my face, reading micro-expression like it was native text. The silence wasn't empty. It was middleware. Assessment, calculation, consequence. Who else saw this? He asked no one. I palmed it when I closed the till. Good. His tone changed, colder but cleaner. This is a probe. They want to see whether you flinch or follow. What am I supposed to do? Neither. You let me do the part they think you can't. I bristled. I don't want you using me like... He cut me off. Not rude, just immovable. No. They are using you. I am intercepting, the difference scraped. I hated that it was real. He angled his body to block the line of sight from the street, creating a pocket of safety disguised as shadow. His hands spoke low between us. You do not walk alone after shifts. You vary your route. You message me when you leave, until I clear this. That sounds like an order. It is a barrier. Orders are walls. Barriers are shields. You can walk behind it or through it, but I will not move it. An admission, packaged like infrastructure. He wasn't trying to own me. He was trying to prevent someone else from claiming that right. We kept our voices down as he walked me toward the bus stop. Your brother Vin shadow-checked him at school today. 3 unfamiliar cars in 10 minutes. They weren't watching him. They were timing him. Codifying habit. My stomach nodded. I wanted to ask if Alec knew. I suspected he did. Kids who grow up reading silence become gifted at interpreting the weather of adults. At the shelter, he paused. When I ask you a question, answer with honesty, not bravery. Understood? I swallowed. Understood. Are you afraid right now? Yes, of me? No, of them? Yes, good. Fear is information. Panic is noise. He stepped back as the bus arrived, giving me a wide berth as if to say I will not crowd your autonomy while I defend your perimeter. I boarded, but as the bus pulled away, he signed once through the glass. Trust your instincts more. That sentence echoed longer than the ride. 2 days passed without incident, which is how dread fattens. I taught my Sunday class at the rec center, smiling through pacing anxiety while toddlers threw foam ducks at each other. A new father whispered, "Thank you," when his baby reached for his face instead of the hearing aid packaging. Somebody always cries in week 3. Today it was him. When I left, the world was hushed by snow. Fat flakes softening sirens, graffiti wearing lace. I walked home slowly, letting cold tuck itself beneath my ribs. Halfway up our block, I saw a maintenance truck parked crooked near our building's alley. The logo peeled. Tires are too new. Wrong picture. Before fear could sprint, a long shadow stepped between me and the inevitable. Mikhail. He cracked the passenger door and flashed a badge I knew wasn't municipal, but looked aggregated enough to pass. The driver melted into apology mode while Mikhail quietly escorted him toward the curb. 3 sentences, none audible, and suddenly the truck backed out like a scalded dog. When he returned, I didn't pretend ignorance. That wasn't maintenance. No, he said. That was a test balloon. They wanted to know who would come outside to check. The next balloon would be bigger. He watched me shiver once before adding, "It is time we change your pattern." I stiffened. I have a life, a job, a brother. And you will keep them, he said, voice like a sealed promise. But not if you stay visible at your current address. They mapped you. We will redraw the map. The sentence felt like a threshold disguised as logistics. Redraw how? I asked carefully. Temporary relocation. My building has a separate floor. You and your brother stay shut until I identify the leak and cauterize it. 48 hours. Maybe 72. My pulse hammered. He wasn't asking me to join a world, I was already in it. He was trying to prevent me from being collateral. I should call a lawyer, I said. Half defense, half delay. You could, he said. But by the time paperwork moves, men like these move you. A shiver traveled somewhere deep. Alec's safety tipped the scale. I could feel it. He must have read the surrender before I did. We collect him first. You pack light, documents, meds, essentials. I already have clothing staged. I blinked. You what? He gave a faint, apologetic tilt of his head. I do not start protection at 0. I plan ahead. A lesser man would have sounded arrogant. On him, it sounded like someone who had lost too many wars by a single hour. We left that night. Alec didn't even argue, just signed faster than his fingers could keep up. He'd sensed the shift days before I admitted it. We traveled in a staggered pattern, sedan, then footpath, then service elevator accessed through a loading dock that smelled like citrus cleaner and old secrets. The safe floor was quiet, not lavish like a penthouse, but fortified. Reinforced doors, layered entry protocols, and windows with ballistic film. Someone had stocked the fridge with Alec's favorite yogurt brand. That detail hit harder than the security tech. Is this yours? I asked softly when Alec disappeared into the guest room. Yes, not the one you think. A pause. The home you pictured. I keep further away from risk. This one is for movement, transition, holding ground. The word holding sounded like a warning and mercy stitched together. He gave me a guest pass, one of those coded discs that unlock segments instead of rooms. Your brother's key unlocks all medical access points. Yours unlocks all exits. Protection means freedom, not a cage. I sank onto the sofa, tension pooling in my muscles. Snow washed the night pale beyond the windows. He stayed near the door, as if refusing to invade more of the space than necessary. You are safe here, he said quietly. I should have said thank you. I said why. His eyes lifted slowly, weighing more than diction, because someone out there has already decided you matter to me. The smart move is to make them right on my terms, not theirs. That was not romance. That was battlefield geometry. And yet something moved under my ribs anyway. He didn't reach for me. He didn't corner me. He simply left me with warmth and consequence in the same room. After he withdrew, I stood alone a long moment before locking the door. The lock clicked like proof. I hadn't been captured. I had been counted. Night softened inside the new walls in a way my old apartment never could. Safety has a sound. It's the absence of the scrape you brace for. Alec slept like gravity finally forgave him. I took inventory of strange comforts, steady HVAC, filtered air, hallway lights pulsing low every minute like a clockable heartbeat. Morning arrived with a knock I felt more than heard. A woman stepped in with a tablet and a smile that wasn't decorative. Mara, she said, and then signed it. House operations. If you need anything, ask me before you think you're being a problem. That rule saves time. Alec perked up immediately. He signed the questions before coffee. Gym, kitchen, Wi-Fi? Mara kept pace, amused. She showed him the gym, small but mean. and the kitchen stocked with things that could buy a week of groceries in my old life. He pretended not to be impressed. He failed. She gave him a wristband that doubled as a key and a medical alert. He rolled his eyes but wore it. Mikhail didn't appear at breakfast. Relief and disappointment tangled in a rope I refused to name. Instead, Vin showed up with a canvas bag and 2 coffees, the exact shade I like. He didn't ask how I took it. He knew. That should have bothered me more. It felt like somebody had finally read the manual I've been writing my whole life. We trained that morning because Alec asked, and because letting fear ferment is a bad recipe. Vin walked us through situational awareness with patient surgical detail. Doors are stories, he said. Windows are choices. We stood in each corner and named what we could use if we had to run. A blanket's weight. The distance to the knives. The angle to avoid casting a betraying shadow. After lunch, the door chimed a pattern I hadn't heard yet. Mara checked the feed, nodded, and let Mikhail in. No suit, dark sweater, winter at his wrist bones. He scanned the room in one sweep, found Alec's grin and said, "How's your forehand?" Alec signed back dangerous, and for the first time in days, the air laughed. We reviewed the map he'd left me, now annotated in my handwriting. He listened to my edits like they mattered. Men like him are used to nods that mean nothing. His nods were agreements I could feel. He briefed quietly. A leak traced to the clinic flyer printer in a mailroom 2 neighborhoods over. 2 men rolled up overnight. The SUV from earlier belonged to a subcontracted courier with a gambling debt. Everything was both mundane and lethal. That's the trick, he said. Violence puts on a polo shirt and carries a clipboard. It looks like an errand until it doesn't. Alec asked who was paying for all of this, a question posed with 17-year-old bluntness. Mikhail didn't dodge. I am, he said. The house. The businesses that keep it fed. It's an investment. Alec signed in us. Mikhail signed the outcome. Then, after a beat, in people. We cooked dinner together because captivity tastes better with garlic. He chopped like a man taught by someone who loved him. I stirred and asked about his daughter. He told me her name, Katya, and the fact that breaks the air. 8. Pneumonia that turned. A hospital that didn't. A Friday that never ended. I said I was sorry because there are no right words, only true ones. He nodded once. Grief is a room with no furniture. You sit on the floor and talk to the walls. After dinner, he didn't linger. He showed us the panic protocol again and left us to the TV and our nerves. Alec fell asleep on the sofa with his mouth open like a dare. I tucked a blanket around him and finally let the quiet take a chair. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. A photo appeared. The alley behind our building, empty, time-stamped 20 minutes ago. Then another, the corridor outside our old apartment. Then a third, closer, the peephole view. My name typed beneath, nice new locks. I forwarded everything to the encrypted contact Mikhail had burned into my memory, then walked to the door and opened it so fast Mara nearly pulled her radio. I need him back, I said. Now. He arrived in less than 5 minutes, winter clinging to his sleeves like a second language. He took the phone, scrolled, and went so still the room shivered. Then he looked at me, not at the screen. You did right, what do we do? He answered with action. Orders to Mara, a call to Vin, a message to a team I couldn't see. Then to me, we leave this floor. It is known now. We change altitude. We rode a freight elevator that smelled like cedar and gun oil. The new space opened on light. The city beyond the glass. He showed us doors that could vanish and a stair that wasn't a wall if you touched it right. He handed me a different disc. This one opens everything, he said. Decide faster. I stared at the disc, at him, at the skyline. I should have felt owned. I felt trusted, and that scared me more. Alec pressed his nose to the glass and sighed. Is that the lake? I nodded. We stood there together, 3 silhouettes, and for the first time since all of this started, I let myself breathe all the way down. Night returned. Mikhail started to leave, then hesitated. If you cannot sleep, there is coffee, he said. My mother believed strong coffee keeps monsters small. Your mother was right, I answered. He held my gaze and something steady passed between us unrelated to rescue. I slept an inch. The next morning arrived soft as static. Alec sprawled diagonally across the guest bed like someone who finally understood what unbroken sleep tasted like. I made tea and watched the skyline thaw into daylight. The city looked different from above. Fewer teeth, more pulse. Mikhail texted at 8:03. 2 words. Status check. I sent thumbs up. He sent back a raised brow emoji. Too modern for the man he appeared to be. I nearly laughed. Nearly. By mid-morning, cabin fever began testing seams. I wasn't built for waiting rooms, even luxury ones. I paced, stretched, and arranged the few books Mara brought from my apartment into neat stacks. She watched me quietly for a moment before saying, "You don't like being protected, do you?" I met her eyes. "I don't like being cornered," she nodded. "Then stand where protection becomes vantage instead of a cage. That's the pivot people miss." She handed me a tablet with muted security feeds. Lobby, alley, street grid. "If you're going to feel responsible," she said, "feel responsible with data. Empathy without intel is just stress." Something in me exhaled. She got it. Around noon, a second layer of quiet peeled back. The space wasn't just guarded, observed with patience. I realized this wasn't a bunker. It was a chessboard, and I wasn't the pawn they'd tried to make me. I might not be queen either, but I was clearly not built for capture. Alec wandered into the kitchen and sighed, hungry with adolescent ferocity. We built sandwiches the size of ambition and ate on the wide sill that overlooked the city. He tapped my knee. "You're thinking too hard," he said. I told him that thinking was my cardio. He rolled his eyes. That's when the console on the wall blinked. A coded tone. Mara crossed to it, lips tightening. She didn't move like an alarm. She moved like confirmation. She turned to me. "He's on his way up." I didn't have time to guess which he was before the door unlocked with that quiet authority I was beginning to recognize. Not kicks, not threats. Keys. Ownership that didn't ask permission. Mikhail stepped in, colder air following him like a coat. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing intent. He scanned Alec first, safe, whole, then me. "We have a problem," he said. Not louder, just lower. I was learning. When he dropped volume, severity climbed. He didn't sit. He projected a building blueprint onto the glass with a swipe from his phone. A grainy thumbnail appeared in the corner. Pause frame CCTV of 2 men at our old door, gloved, patient. "They didn't break in. They waited. Why wait?" I asked. "They expected you to panic and go back for something you forgot." Documents, medicine, clothes. They wanted desperation, not confrontation. And when we didn't, they upgraded the threat. They are no longer mapping. They are hunting. The word landed like iron. He zoomed the map. "They have footage of you from Thursday the night at the bus stop. That means your identity is now confirmed. The window before escalation closes soon." My veins chilled. Escalation meant different rules. So what now? I asked. "Now," he said. "We build your perimeter wider than theirs." He turned to Alec. "You will have a temporary school transfer, remote clearance, and monitored pickup. Mara will coordinate. Practice stays, but at a controlled facility," Alec nodded, jaw set. He wasn't fighting the pivot anymore. He was adapting. Resilience in ASL is written through the spine. Then Mikhail looked at me, more slowly. "And you," he said, "are coming out of hiding. Not into danger, but into visibility under protection. People do not chase what is already claimed by someone more dangerous than they." My breath stalled. Claimed sounded like a collar until I saw his posture. Straight, contained, deferential in an odd way. "Not possession, shield." He let the pause breathe. I could say no. He left room for it. "If I say no?" I asked. "Then I build protection around you without leverage," he answered. "Harder, slower, riskier. But I still do it. Because at this point, your existence has entered a ledger none of us can rewrite." It should have scared me. It steadied me. He lowered his voice. "Someone has to signal the cost of touching you. Otherwise, they keep bidding." I studied him for a long time. The grief, the discipline, the command that had teeth only when needed. I realized men like him do not speak in metaphors when lives are at stake. They speak in deterrence. "What does coming out of hiding look like?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "You appear beside me in controlled spaces. You are seen, unafraid. You show them you are not prey. And they recalculate their odds. Even jackals have self-preservation. It wasn't marriage or surrender. It was a strategy in skin. Mara brought coffee, hers for him, dark, mine sweet. "This is the part," she said lightly, "where everyone panics before they evolve." He didn't smile, but something in his shoulders unlocked. "I need to know one thing," I said. "If I step near your world, will I still belong to mine?" He held my gaze with a grim kind of honesty. "Only if you walk like you cannot take it from you." That wasn't an answer. It was the truth. I took a breath. "Okay, what comes first?" "Preparation," he said. "Then the assessment, then exposure, in that order." He turned to leave but paused at the threshold. "Today you stay here. Tomorrow we begin building a narrative. If they believe you are guarded by proximity, escalation will slow. We only need to give them a reason to choose caution." He stepped out. The door sealed behind him with a hush that sounded like the beginning of momentum. Alec nudged me with his elbow. "He signed you like him. I signed I don't." He arched a perfect teenage eyebrow. "Sure." I watched the skyline again. Only this time I didn't feel like I was hiding above the city. Felt like I was being positioned. The difference was terrifying. The difference was power. Preparation began with shoes. Not metaphors, actual souls. Mara laid out 3 pairs like mission briefings. Flats with ankle straps I could run in, boots that could hide a blade I would never carry, and heels that looked like a dare. Visibility, she said, isn't just cameras. It's how people's eyes decide to calculate you. Tonight, your job is to be seen without becoming a spectacle. Tonight. The word ran its temperature up my spine. Mikhail sent a car that I pretended not to recognize. The driver was a new woman. Eyes like scout maps. Name tag reading Lyda. "She signed Nice to meet you, and please tell me if my driving makes you nauseous." I laughed harder than that joke deserved, because my nerves needed a door. The venue wasn't a restaurant or a dark corner. It was a community center carved into the bones of an old station. All brick and good acoustics, hosting an arts fundraiser for inclusive after-school programs. Of course he chose this. Visibility without vulgarity. Children's art lined the hall like declarations. Volunteers with clipboards moved in purposeful shoelace chaos. The kind of crowd where being seen meant belonging to something better. Mikhail waited near the check-in table. No entourage crowding him, only space making room. He wore a suit the color of a knight you want to trust, and a tie that did not announce itself. When he saw us, his face didn't flicker to command. It warmed to humans. He greeted Alec first, as if the boy had been the one to invite him. Then he turned to me and used his hands for hello, for thank you for coming, for you look like you slept. It was the most intimate language in a public place, and somehow it was the least invasive. We moved together through the entry like a tide. People noticed. They always do when proximity wears polish. But the noticing wasn't the hot stove kind. It felt like the way people note a mural they didn't expect. Pause, nod, move on with a better story for their commute. Assessment came disguised as chit-chat. Donors shook hands. Board members thanked volunteers. I could feel the air cross-hatching with glances that had nothing to do with us and everything to do with budgets. Mara drifted the perimeter. Lida pretended to be fascinated by a schedule taped crooked on the wall while keeping her sightlines clean. Vin was nowhere visible, which meant he was where he was most effective. Then the signs started. Not the security ones, the hands. I saw a little boy tell his grandma about the bathroom with urgency and perfect grammar. I saw a teenager teach her boyfriend how to spell his own name. I saw a mother cup her hand by her cheek and wiggle fingers, beautiful, at her daughter's lopsided paper sun. The room didn't just include deaf kids. It centered them. Sound was optional. Participation wasn't. Mikhail's shoulders shed 2 degrees of tension. He watched me watch the room, measuring my breathing like a gauge. I didn't realize until later that this was a test for him too. Could he stand next to me in public without caging? Could he let the narrative hold us instead of forcing it? A man I recognized from 3 committees ago approached with earnest eyebrows and a checkbook. He thanked me for the Thursday class as if I had invented language. I deflected, as always, pointing at the parents who showed up even when their shifts ended at midnight. Mikhail didn't interrupt. He didn't plant a hand on my back, or tilt me where he needed me to be. He let the conversation carry us to the stage only when the director waved with the kind of frantic joy that means the sound system finally worked. "Nika will say a few words," the director announced, catching me flat-footed with kindness. The room applauded like a careful rain. I didn't look at Mikhail because I knew what would be on his face. Readiness to catch me if I fell. I stepped up anyway. I kept it short. I told them the sentence I wrote for a woman in my lobby days ago. It isn't a tragedy. It's a new alphabet. I told them my mother taught me to read before I could afford books. So now I teach hands that want to say everything at once. I told them we do emergency phrases in week 1, not because we expect fear, but because power prefers fluency. And I signed as I spoke because translation is respect. When I stepped down, Mikhail's pupils had gone tender around the edges. He didn't say good job. He signed proudly. The economy of that word in that language undid me a little. That was when the air stumbled. It was small, the kind of hitch only a person trained to notice catches. A man near the back wall shifted his weight too often. His eyes kept sliding toward the east exit that bled into a service corridor. Another at the far corner laughed at the wrong time, pulse ticking hard at his throat. A third, near the donation table, held his phone like a detonator he wasn't allowed to press. They weren't together. That was the point. Triangulation without conversation. Pre-action anxiety wearing thrift store jackets. My body went still. My hands, traitors, signed trouble to Mikhail before my mouth caught up. He didn't glance around. He responded with a barely there nod and a single sign. Show me. I didn't point in a way that would teach anyone to look. I told a story while my hands talked over the words. Back wall nervous. East exit watcher. Donation table fidget. He absorbed it without moving his head. Then his posture shifted by degrees. He did not become larger. He became inevitable. Exposure wasn't the press photo he'd promised. It was letting the wrong people see the right thing. That I belonged to a perimeter that noticed first. He didn't whistle his men in. He didn't flip a table. He let the program run one more minute while a woman in a purple dress read a list of sponsors like a lullaby. Then he touched my elbow, one tap, permission request, and guided me 2 steps to the left. We were suddenly in the blind spot of a structural column. Lita slid into the east corridor with a volunteer badge that looked earned. Mara asked the boy near the donation table to help her carry juice boxes, removing the fidget's line of sight. A gentle man with a lanyard and a stern look took up space where the back wall shifter had leaned. And just like that, a threat struggled to locate itself. It hummed for a few more beats, indecision tasting its own tail. The back wall man tested the door and found it monitored. The donation fidget scrolled his phone to nowhere. The east exit watcher clocked Lita's badge and recalibrated his courage down. The jackals sniffed and realized the herd was something else. I exhaled for the first time in a full minute. Mikhail's hand left my elbow without marking me. He signed a good call, then timed how long it took me to stop shaking. Not long, less than last time. A ledger you never want to have, but mine, regardless. We moved through the rest of the night like nothing had tilted. That's the other trick. Don't feed the story more than it deserves. We mingled. Alec taught a board member how to sign stubborn and please with a smirk only siblings can weaponize. Mikhail bid on a painting that looked like a city remembering its own river. When the auction ended, we left with a box of leftover cupcakes and 3 new names for my Thursday class. Outside, the cold was clean, and the street was quiet in the way that means you are being watched by architecture only. Lita brought the car around. As the door opened, Mikhail touched his chest with 2 fingers, then flicked them toward me, the sign quiet and direct as a silver thread. You're beautiful. He had said it the first night like a surprise that betrayed his fluency. Now he said it like a fact the world would be foolish to argue with. I didn't blush. I filed it with necessary truths and the way his eyes had softened when I signed proudly back. Because I was too, not of the metaphor of us, of the practice. On the ride home, Alec fell asleep mid-text, head tipping onto my shoulder. I watched the city stream by and thought about danger wearing a polo, and safety smelling like lemon oil and coffee. I thought about how exposure, done right, is a boundary drawn in public. This is ours. This is not yours. Choose better. When we reached the safe floor, Mikhail didn't follow us in. He stood in the hall with his hands behind his back in discipline. You did well, he said. You read the window shortened by 40 seconds. 40 seconds is often the difference between almost and aftermath. I nodded. Thank you for not turning it into a war. He almost smiled. Every war I avoid is a battle I've already won, we wrote up. The door closed. The quiet returned, not empty but full of choices. For the first time since the first night, I didn't feel like my life was something that kept happening to me. It felt like a space I was learning to design. The city learned our names without learning our faces. That was the point. We moved through days like chess pieces that never left the board but kept changing angles. Mara tightened routines until they felt like choreography. Lita rotated cars and routes so nothing built a pattern. I lived between gratitude and rebellion and discovered there was room to breathe. The perimeter stretched wider. Alec's school accepted a temporary remote transfer without question. Practice shifted to an indoor court in a repurposed warehouse with lines so crisp they looked printed. Vin supervised like a metronome, never shouting, always correcting the one thing that would matter when the world tilted. Balance, he said. Your feet tell the truth before your face does. Mikhail vanished into the kind of work that announces itself only when it's done. His updates read like weather and carried consequence. 2 subcontractors flipped. A printer linked to the clinic mailers packed a bag for Indiana, then turned around outside Gary and walked into a precinct. The SUV from the first week was traced to a delivery outfit that didn't exist last winter. Someone had decided we were a project. My Thursday class doubled. Parents arrived carrying questions no one had let them ask. We practiced emergency phrases with gentleness and speed. A mother confessed she still mouthed words when she signed because the silence felt impolite. I told her silence is a language, not a failure. She cried and laughed in the same minute. The fundraiser made small waves online. Visibility did what Mikhail promised. On a Tuesday that looked ordinary, a message arrived inside an order ticket. Table 7 wrote compliments to the chef, and beneath it, 3 letters that did not match the handwriting. EOW, end of watch. Police slang, but not a threat. A warning. The server who delivered it looked 20 and terrified. He said a man at 7 asked him to make sure I saw the note. He described the man. City haircut, badge bulge, eyes already set. Mara answered on the second ring. She told me to step into the back hallway and read the note twice. Then she told me to breathe. Lita arrived 6 minutes later with a delivery from a vendor who didn't exist. We walked to the alley like nothing was on fire and drove without looking hurried. The entire time my hands wanted to spell panic. I kept them in my pockets. Mikhail met us on the operations floor and listened without moving. He didn't guess. He asked questions only I could answer. Was the server left-handed? Did the cop wear an undershirt? Did his shoes look like he was on his feet all day? Did he say anything when he passed the cash? I answered. The picture formed. A man bound by a code, trying to cut a clean line through the dark without breaking his oath. We did not call the precinct. We did something slower. Mikhail wrote a name on the glass, and Mara entered it into a system braided from legal databases and street memory. A face bloomed. Sergeant Corley, community detail. 1 complaint dismissed, 3 commendations. He'd filed a grant for accessible emergency training that never got funded. He had a daughter with mild hearing loss. He had a reason to care. Mikhail's eyes softened by a degree I'd learned to measure. We will not harm him, he said. We will not use him. We will let him help once. A single clean favor, then distance. That night we rehearsed exposure at scale. I would speak at a library with cameras that worked. Alec would teach a phrase to teenagers who would film it and forget it, and, by forgetting, spread it. Mikhail would stand just far enough away that anyone filming us would have to zoom. We would show them the cost. Not theatrics, not fear, but attention. The library smelled like paper and old air. I told a story about a boy who learned to sign no and yes before he learned mine. A journalist asked if visibility made me worry about becoming a target. I said vulnerability and visibility are different math problems. Vulnerability can be exploited. Visibility can be defended. After we walked through the winter dusk, we kept the pace casual and the angles clean. I saw it too late to change position gracefully. A van parked too close to the curb, back doors aligned with the side exit. The handle flexed. The lock clicked. Lita moved. Vin's voice slid into my ear through the comm Mikhail had clipped there. Right turn. Take the stairs down, not up. Do not lead them to the car. We flowed into the stairwell like we belonged there. Mikhail didn't look back. He set a speed Alec could match and never broke formation. The door below opened before we reached it. Another team, faces I didn't know. We poured into a service hallway and surfaced 2 streets over into buses, bored people, and a food truck selling patience disguised as fries. The van never left its spot. Hunter denied prey. forced to rethink a script that relied on surprise. Back at the safe floor, Mikhail washed his hands, dried them, and said nothing for a long time. When he spoke, his voice had gravel in it. They are done probing. They will either go quiet and wait for a softer day, or they will accelerate. There isn't a third door. He looked at me like a ledger and a person at once. Tomorrow we move to the last step, he said. We make the claim official enough to halt amateurs and irritate professionals. We let them see what it costs to reach for you. We stayed strategic. We stayed distant. I went to bed with my heart hammering steady, not fast. The drum of a runner counting strides. The emotional inevitability waited in the next room like a suitcase packed but not carried. I slept, and the city dreamed its careful, watchful dream safe. Morning broke with the clarity of a decision. Not the loud kind, more like a door already open. Mikhail's plan fit into 3 ordinary rituals: a notarized filing, a quiet luncheon, and a walk in daylight while the city minded its errands. The filing was simple and strategic. List me as a consultant to Bandon Hospitality's community operations, a role with public purpose and private perimeter. Mara braided the rest. Alec at practice, ringed by coaches. Lita is driving a car and no one notices. Vin is floating where trouble likes to perch. I would stand beside Mikhail at noon, answer 2 questions about inclusive hiring, then walk 4 blocks to the training kitchen. If predators wanted a stage, we would give them lighting that punished uninvited hands. I dressed in boots that hid nothing. Hair clean, nothing theatrical. When the elevator opened, Mikhail stood there like a promise. He signed ready. I signed always, a lie I needed to become true. Notary, signatures, and ink drying. He let me read every line twice. At noon, winter light pressed the city flat. People watched us like cranes, aware that something heavy moved, relieved it wasn't falling. We walked. His hand hovered at my back without touching, a force field an inch from skin. I felt protected and unowned. On the 3rd block, the street changed temperature. Vin's voice slid into my ear. 2 of our 11, one across, leaning on a call he isn't making. Wrong hunger in their eyes. I didn't break stride. Mikhail angled us a foot closer. You are not prey, he said softly. Walk like the ground knows your name. The first man peeled from a doorway, trying on the casual of a salesman. The second adjusted his cap, checked his reflection in a window that was actually a mirror. The third drifted, not closing distance so much as denying exits. I felt the instinct to shrink. Instead, I collected breath-like evidence and kept my spine where it belonged. They timed their approach to the crosswalk. The salesman arrived with a smile borrowed from a training video. Ms. Petrov, quick question about your involvement with... Mikhail didn't touch him. His body wrote a sentence in posture. The smile stalled. The Catman recalculated and came from my right. Hand half raised toward my elbow in a gesture meant to look like guidance, but reading like a claim. I stepped left. Clean. So his hand found air. My voice stayed low. Do not touch me. He started to say, relax. Mikhail turned his head 1 degree. The word died on the man's tongue like a moth in winter. Lita rolled the car to the curb, door opening on a hinge that sounded like an opportunity. The third man looked past us for backup. There wasn't any. Amateurs had arrived at a table set for professionals. We got in. The door closed. The city resumed like we had edited out a frame of film. In the kitchen, cameras waited with prearranged questions. We answered what mattered. Accessible training reduces turnover. Multilingual signage saves lives. Partnerships don't sanitize reputations. They scale care. A journalist asked something real. What does safety mean to you now? I answered plainly. Safety is when a person can say no without exciting violence. Safety is when a deaf child's first word is not sorry. Safety is when a woman walking beside a powerful man does not disappear into his shadow. Mikhail didn't look at me. He stood there not as a benefactor, but as context. The filing would go live in an hour. The photos would land in small feeds. Somebody hunting would do the math and see a price not worth paying fast. We drove back through a city pretending not to look. In the elevator, alone for the first time all day, the quiet we had been saving walked in and shut the door. I leaned on the rail because the adrenaline invoice had come due. He watched my hands shake once and not again. You were perfect, he said, not performing, simply reporting. You change their minds without letting them touch your story. I laughed, too tired to deflect. That's all I've ever wanted. To keep the story, he nodded, the smallest bow. Then his voice softened. And what do you want now? It should have been the same answer. It wasn't. Our first night fell between us, and we stood up older. I want to stop pretending the only thing between us is strategy. The elevator kept climbing. He didn't move closer. He didn't make me come to him. He lifted his hands where the cameras could not see and signed, I have wanted that since the first sentence I said to you. You're beautiful, I said, finally translating him aloud, and watched relief and hunger and grief share his face without fighting. His hand reached for my cheek and stopped a breath away, asking without asking. I closed the distance because choosing mattered. When our mouths met, it wasn't rescue dressing as passion. It was the treaty we had written across rooms, finally signed. Outside, predators counted new costs. Inside, we began the arithmetic of us.